As we finally begin to move into the springtime, the weather has become slightly more active around the First Coast region. As mentioned in the last First Coast storm tracking video about March 9th and 10th of this year, conditions have been pretty quiet in 2025 when it came to thunderstorms. This would continue throughout most of late March and into early April, with only 2 other days where thunderstorms occurred around our area. We're still in the time of year when stormy weather and thunderstorm days are spread pretty far apart, usually only happening every 1 to 2 weeks. However, as we move into the warmer months, it seems like the stormy days we do see begin to become more active overall. This would be the case for April 11th, 2025, where numerous thunderstorms impacted much of northern Florida and especially the First Coast region of the state. Throughout the evening, numerous reports of large hail would be received across our region, accompanied by heavy thunderstorms with plenty of lightning and gusty winds. And with said storms happening in the later hours of the day, we were able to see plenty of lightning. Before we get into the footage and further discussion of the thunderstorms we saw on April 11th, I want to cover the overall synoptic setup and what led to the stormy conditions we saw on that day. The primary driver for thunderstorm activity on April 11th was going to be a cold front that was beginning to move into Florida from a more northerly angle than usual. This cold front was associated with the surface low that as of the morning of the 11th was situated over the Carolinas, with the front extending southwestward across much of the deep south. Taking a look at the morning issuance of the area forecast discussion from NWS Jacksonville, we get some more details on what other factors would help contribute to stormy weather for the day. Noted along with the cold front was deep troughing that was occurring aloft across much of the eastern United States. Looking at the 500 millibar map, it's pretty clear to see where this trough is and that we were on the southern periphery of it. Not only was the trough helping to push the cold front south through our area, it would also serve to provide lift in the mid and upper levels of the atmosphere that would help develop thunderstorms. Two other factors that were helping to contribute to the potential for strong thunderstorms was strong westerly bulk shear and abnormally cool temperatures aloft for this time of year. Looking at the bulk shear values for the lower 6 kilometers of the atmosphere, where most thunderstorms develop, we can see that values ranging from 50 to 70 knots were present throughout the afternoon and evening. In addition to the strong wind shear was also those really cold atmospheric temperatures. Noted in a later morning update, mid-level lapse rates were expected to be extremely steep for this time of year, reaching values around 7.2. In layman's terms, lapse rate is the change in temperature with height. Rapidly changing temperatures in the upper atmosphere help to contribute to atmospheric instability. These extremely cold temperatures aloft would allow for the possibility of hail to develop and would become a part of our story later on when we chase the local storm. The only real limiting factor when it came to thunderstorm development was pretty limited moisture in the lower levels of the atmosphere. Going back to that morning update, it mentioned that dry air across our region would likely limit convective development until the cold front reached a quote-unquote ribbon of moisture that was situated near the I-10 corridor. Taking a look at this mid-level satellite depiction of atmospheric moisture, we could see this ribbon, which is the dark blue and white area over southern Georgia and North Florida, along with a dry slot to the north, which is shaded in yellow. Watching this loop in full, the forecast was right on the mark, as thunderstorms began to explode within this narrow stretch of moisture through the evening hours. Throughout the day, PWAT values were measuring less than an inch, with much of our area ranging from 0.6 to 0.9 through most of the afternoon and into the evening hours. Despite the pretty dry conditions in the lower levels of the atmosphere, it still seemed like there was enough moisture there to get storms firing. With all of the aforementioned favorable factors in place across our region, it seemed like the First Coast was going to be in for some strong to potentially severe thunderstorms on April 11th. The Storm Prediction Center had much of North Florida under a marginal risk for severe storms, along with the Carolinas region due to the associated low pressure center that was producing the cold front. The two main threats that were anticipated were hail and damaging winds, both given a 5% chance of occurrence. Excessive rainfall was not expected to occur as a result of the thunderstorms we'd see, due to their relatively fast forward motion and limited atmospheric moisture leading to manageable rainfall rates. With the atmospheric synopsis out of the way, let's get into the timeline for the day. We were watching out for thunderstorm development for most of the day, but as mentioned in the morning update and the key messages graphic from NWS Jax, convective activity would hold off until the latter half of the day, generally between 3 to 11 p.m. I remember feeling surprised that it was supposed to storm on April 11th, as not only was the air pretty dry outside, it was an absolutely gorgeous day. Take a look at this satellite loop. There were barely any clouds in the sky for most of the morning and into the early afternoon. Obviously, no clouds early on in the day doesn't mean that there can't be storms later. I guess I was just used to other storm systems we had seen throughout the winter, where it was usually a muggy, dreary day well in advance of any showers or storms we saw. By 2 p.m., the underlying atmospheric conditions that would lead to the strong to severe storms we saw later in the day were starting to fall into place. Using the SPC mesoscale analysis page, I pulled these point values at 2 p.m. Of note, you could see that the CAPE values, namely the surface-based and mixed layer especially, were pretty meager for this time of year. However, the lapse rates and shear values were fairly high, and were only expected to rise as the cold front approached the region. It would take until around 4 p.m. for the first signs of thunderstorm activity to start around North Florida, but once the storm started to form, they became feisty pretty quickly. Owing to both the cold front and the aforementioned ribbon of moisture, thunderstorms would generally form from north to south throughout the evening. Once they formed, due to the mean wind 850 to 300 millibar direction being westerly across the region, they would move almost due west to east with little vertical movement. This would change during the later evening hours as the cold front pushed in from the north, helping to give the storms a bit of a shove and a more southerly component of movement. The first storm of the day to receive a special weather statement was at 4:40 p.m. This first alert was given to a cluster of showers and thunderstorms located just north of downtown Jacksonville, with the outline threats being 40-mile-per-hour wind gusts and penny-sized hail. About 15 minutes later, another storm was entering the far western portions of our Florida counties, namely Hamilton and Columbia, and was given a special weather statement at 4:53. Threats here were almost the same, but instead of penny-sized hail, it was pea-size. This storm would be important later, but we'll get to that in a bit. 10 minutes later at 5:03 p.m., a linear cluster was beginning to move into our region from out of the Big Bend, and this was also given a special weather statement. This storm would also become important later on, as this would be one of the two storms to impact Clay County later on in the evening. Over the next hour, the two storms continued to truck along I-10, receiving more special weather statements, but not intensifying too much. This was until around 6 p.m. when the Hamilton County storm began to move towards the outskirts of Jacksonville. By this point, the storm that went over Hamilton County was now located over Charlton County in Georgia and had another active special weather statement on it. But at 5:54 p.m., the storm was given a severe thunderstorm warning, with the main threats being 60-mile-per-hour wind gusts and quarter-size hail, which is 1 inch in diameter. The storm was given another severe thunderstorm warning at 6:22 p.m. as it moved over Jacksonville, with the same threats being outlined. This storm would go on to produce pea-sized hail in Jacksonville, along with producing wind gusts of 61 miles per hour. Taking a look at this storm on radar, it looked quite impressive. Even on the normal reflectivity radar, it was pretty clear to see that the storm was capable of putting out hail, with wide swaths of bright pink and even some darker shades of pink indicating either extremely heavy rainfall or hail. We can use the vertically integrated liquid mode as well, which was giving off pretty strong signals of hail potential as the storm approached from the west. These signals did diminish as the storm moved over Jacksonville, but I think there was a good reason for that. The storm moved right over the local radar site, and going by the name vertically integrated liquid, and knowing that the radar would have trouble seeing high into a storm that was right overhead, I think it was a matter of unfavorable positioning with the radar. And again, seeing it on reflectivity, it doesn't look like the storm weakened all that much, even as it was moving over the city or as it moved off the coast. The last notable thing I want to show y'all from this storm was the velocity scan. After the storm crosses over the radar site around 6:15, radar depicts very strong winds moving into the eastern portions of Jacksonville, along with an outflow boundary heading south. Looking at the severe weather reports from the severe thunderstorm warning that was issued at the time, Mayport received a 61-mile-per-hour wind gust. Mayport is located near the beaches, which lines up with what was depicted on velocity radar. By 6 p.m., we were beginning to get ready to go out for a storm chase, though we were admittedly stumped on what we were going to do. By 6:30 p.m., two distinct areas of thunderstorms were moving towards us in Clay County. One was the aforementioned linear cluster in the western portions of our viewing area, beginning to move more southward along I-10 to impact northern Clay County. More notably was an intense thunderstorm further to our southwest near Gainesville. At 6:37 p.m., this storm was given a severe thunderstorm warning, with outline threats being similar to the Jacksonville severe storm, 60-mile-per-hour wind gust, and 1 inch in diameter hail. This storm was expected to move northeasterly into southern portions of Clay County over the next hour. Weighing our options, I initially wanted to try and intercept the Gainesville storm. It was looking more and more impressive with each radar scan, and I thought it would be a good opportunity to see hail. However, as the storm continued to intensify, that didn't look to be such a great idea. By 6:40 p.m., the storm was maxing out values on the vertically integrated liquid product, indicating an extremely high likelihood of large hail. This would later be verified with numerous reports coming out of Gainesville of 1.7-inch diameter hail, which is about the size of a golf ball. One spot in Alachua County even received a hailstone of 2 inches in diameter, which is considered to be destructive and is about the size of an egg. In addition to the danger of intercepting such an intense storm, it was also moving pretty fast, with a forward speed of 40 miles per hour to the northeast. By the time we left the house at around 7 p.m., the storm was already to Keystone Heights in southwestern Clay County. If we wanted to intercept the storm at that point, our best bet would have been to go east into Green Cove Springs and then go south. However, there was another wrench thrown in that plan. The Clay County Fair was currently going on, and it was a Friday night, meaning the road leading to where we needed to be, State Road 16, was going to be slam-packed. So, between the danger of potentially destructive hail and congested road conditions, we decided that it wouldn't be wise to chase the Gainesville storm. I'm all for seeing severe weather, but safety comes first. So, instead, we decided to just head down the road to our usual recording spot and try to observe the Gainesville storm from a distance to see if we could see some lightning. The storm was expected to pass a safe distance to our south, around 10 miles or so this seemed like an ideal plan. We headed out of the house just after 7 p.m. that evening, quickly stopping by a local pond to snap some pictures of another cluster of storms that was moving through Duval County. This was not the previously mentioned severe storm that hit Jacksonville, it was another storm following it. I stopped there just because of how dark it was looking off to our north, which was likely due in part to the sun beginning to set. But as we began to move to our recording site, something was happening in relation to that storm in Jacksonville that would change the outcome of our night quite drastically. Taking a look at the radar focusing primarily on Clay County, an outflow boundary is seen coming out of the north from the complex of storms over Duval and Bradford counties starting at around 6:30. This boundary would not only lead to extremely chilly, gusty winds shortly after we arrived at our recording site, but would also help rapidly spur up thunderstorms almost directly in front of us. We got to our recording site at around 7:12 p.m. I know the time in the top left says it was 6:21, but that was some sort of glitch with the camera. I don't know why, but the camera time was 51 minutes off from real time. Regardless of that glitch though, we got there just in the nick of time, as I quickly got a pan shot of the leading edge of the storms, and I have to say this was one of the more stunning storms I've seen in person.
I saw a flash in there.
As you can hear in that clip, the winds were absolutely whipping. It wouldn't be long before the winds picked up even more, as the aforementioned outflow boundary crossed overhead at 7:15 according to radar. When it did, we were hit with strong wind gusts ranging from 25 to 30 miles per hour, and we watched as dust and sand got kicked up on the horizon. What was also very notable was just how cold this wind was. We went from it being 77 degrees when we left the house to temperatures quickly plummeting 8 degrees over the next half hour. While 69 degrees isn't exactly what I would call cold, I believe the temperature associated with these winds locally along the boundary were much colder, possibly down into the low 60s or upper 50s. This is due to the wind being primarily rain-cooled air being pushed out from the thunderstorm, and as mentioned, there was really cold temperatures up in the atmosphere. Regardless, the wind was cold enough to leave us shivering.
Already got some good ones. So 23. That's starting to feel right. Feel like a trough. Shit. Yeah, it is. Outflow. Chilly. It is freaking chilly, actually. A lot of rain cooled air, probably. Shoved out. Okay, at least actually go on that thing. It's that dry. That's cold. Yeah. Lightning. Damn. I don't know if we got it. Dude. It's going bad. Me too. Shit. I'll have a raincoat. This is insane, ain't it? Yeah. There you go. So, something else. Yeah, I don't think I've ever felt like outflow like that be that cold. I mean, it's still 74 out. It's not like it's cold outside today.
After the outflow boundary had passed, we began to notice that the rain was falling not very far from us, and lightning was beginning to flash from within a newly developing rain shaft. We even managed to see a few cloud-to-cloud lightning strikes. What I didn't realize at the time was that this activity was from rapidly developing thunderstorms off of the outflow boundary.
Another flash. Starting to see. Looks like it's actually starting to drop some rain there. I noticed that. Oh, this has got to be it was just kind of like tangled up. Dude, maybe we didn't need to go all the way to Keystone.
I guess not.
Just, oh, that's so gorgeous looking. Like how you see the outer edges of it.
Yeah.
It's a lot of flashes. So, no, I'm sitting here kind of in awe of the outflow, dude. I've never felt it like that. It's so cold.
Right.
So that's what I'm wondering is it's a west wind. It's coming from behind us, so I'm guessing it's that big. More lighting up in the sky. Wow. Look at the clouds above us. Look at how they're swirling a little bit.
Smoke. This is what. God, you can watch them flow. Look.
Yeah.
You can watch them.
What?
That's crazy. I've never seen anything like that.
No, me neither. There's a lot of like, not like full on bolts, but I'm seeing like arcs in the clouds coming from it.
Yeah.
Let me go see what's going on because that looks like way close. It actually does look like the storm towards Keystone is starting to pick up a little bit again, but I mean, I think we're good here.
Yeah, what's going on right here?
I think we're fine here.
You can actually see a huge gust just hit over there.
Yeah.
Like, just hit.
Once it's done here, turn around and film that way once it gets dark.
As we continued to watch the storm develop, we were able to see actual cloud-to-ground lightning strikes. My partner and I were pretty happy about that, considering it had been quite the quiet past 7 months in terms of seeing lightning. In addition to the lightning, we were hit with the strongest wind gusts of the whole storm, reaching 30 miles per hour according to the anemometer.
I'm waiting for this all year.
I'm kind of surprised. I wasn't really expecting to actually see light.
It's right with the moment. Definitely top 3 in the most interesting storms.
You think so?
Maybe more like top 5, I guess. But I don't know. Like, this is still crazy. And honestly, the biggest thing is we're not getting poured on right now.
Yeah.
We just have the opportunity to see our environments. You see the fucking sun shining through there, and then the fucking lightning, and whatever the hell's going on up here.
Wow.
Really good storm.
I'm glad I stopped, dude. We missed all this. Actually, probably would have been a little bit closer to it. I noticed a lot of dust is starting to get kicked up in front of us.
Shows up the dust from earlier.
I don't know. Look. Coming out of the north.
Another, he's got You're over the houses, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. There's another one.
Just trying to aim it at the main rain shaft there. I think that was a little bit more than that, honestly.
Probably.
That felt more like a 20. Alright, it's getting cold again.
Yeah.
Ah, jeez, I saw a really dim hole. Like, I probably didn't pick up on camera, but it was pretty far back. Yeah. Oh yeah, no. That's why. A really heavy range of
After we got hit with that pretty hefty wind gust, we decided to get into the car until it calmed down. It started to rain for a little bit as well, and we noticed that the raindrops that were falling were absolutely massive.
Alright, we're just gonna record from in here for a minute because it is cold and there's lightning nearby, but like, dude, these are some massive raindrops. Oh my god.
It's crazy.
Yeah. So let's see, we got lightning, got those really cold raindrops, we got a 30-mile-per-hour gust. Oh no, I say we did pretty good.
I think so.
So now I'm trying to figure out what to do next, because like, it's going to be dark soon. We're probably not going to be able to see too much more lightning off of that storm behind us that we were watching, because I mean like, that's some heavy shit, but look at what's out in front of us now.
Ooh.
Yeah. Just on your keystone still. Oh, I'm gonna stop the wipers for a second. You gotta see how big these raindrops are on the windshield. Like,
Each drop is bigger than an inch around once it hits.
those are huge raindrops.
On the wipers again, just once. Like,
Oh my god.
look at those.
They're so big. Those are huge.
Bigger than an inch. That's two. Fuck.
Yeah.
That feels pretty cold too.
That's when they said it was pretty cold up there in the atmosphere today. And they
They're
weren't
lying.
they weren't kidding.
Wow.
I just saw, like, I'm gonna point this way. I just saw lightning, like a big strike down that way. You know what? I'm just gonna turn the car.
Once the rain and the wind calmed down, I turned the car to face more southerly. At this point, the formerly severe warm storm over Gainesville was beginning to pass to our south through southern Clay County. While the heaviest of the rain and possibly hail was positioned decently far to our south, we were able to see a good amount of lightning strikes. Aside from the lightning, it was just a very pretty view, with what looked to be some scud clouds rolling along the base of the storm.
Definitely seeing some flashes out of there. I think I might have missed the bolts, but yeah.
As the storm began to shift to our east, we got back out of the car and positioned the camera up on the hill again. While we did capture a bit more lightning on camera, the storm seemed to be winding down.
Give us a few more minutes. Probably get going. I think there's almost definitely gonna be some rain that way. I saw like the outer edges of it. Or it might be getting a little far away from here. Into that tree line there. Maybe if we were on the other side of the pond, but
Drive out to that, whatever that neighborhood is. The house is going to be behind.
yeah, no.
With the main cells we were watching moving away from our viewing range, we decided to head back home and get ready for the second cluster of storms to move through. The camera was set up on the back patio, and all that was left to do was to wait for the storm to move in. When the storm finally began to move overhead, it was quite a bit calmer than what we experienced on the outskirts of the cells that we saw out in the field. The wind was much calmer, though it was raining a bit harder. However, the main draw was the lightning. Even though we did not see nearly as many lightning strikes from the second storm, the strikes we did see were absolutely incredible.
Yeah. Woo! Yeah. Now that I'm home, move it back. Yeah. Oh my god, dude. You saw that, right? Like the whole goddamn sky. That's
By 8:30 p.m., most of the activity had cleared out of our area. The leading edge of the storm cluster was heading southeastward towards St. Johns and Putnam counties, leaving us in an area of light stratiform rain for another half hour or so. The MCS that moved overhead was given multiple special weather statements before, during, and after it came through our area. Each time, the outlined threats were wind gusts around 40 miles per hour and pea-size hail. Locally, we did not see any hail from the storm. The same cannot be said for other parts of our viewing area. As I mentioned earlier, the severe thunderstorm that moved over Gainesville and into southern Clay dropped golf ball-sized hailstones, which is around 1.75 inches. A 2-inch hailstone was also reported around 4 miles to the north-northeast of Gainesville Airport. Gainesville and Alachua County were not the only areas to see hail, however, despite them seeing the largest reports. On screen, you're going to see a list of hail reports from multiple counties around our area. All of this information was sourced from the IEM JAX page, which is a program that keeps track of weather reports and all of the digital products the National Weather Service issues. Unfortunately, NWS JAX did not make a public information statement listing off the hail reports like they did for the wind reports on April 11th, so I decided to make my own list to visualize the reports. Because if you take a look at the screenshot, for example, the IEM JAX page would be quite a mess to read if you're just trying to pick out the hail reports. Just a quick reminder, hail is considered to be at severe level when it's at 1 inch in diameter or more. Multiple reports of pea-sized hail, which is around 1/4 of an inch in diameter, came in from Duval County, both from broadcast media and the public. There were reports of hail as big as dimes falling in Duval, which is about 0.70 inches. Duval County had the most reports overall with 11, but that is likely due to Duval and Jacksonville at large being much more heavily populated than other locations around the First Coast. Hail fell in 4 other counties around our area aside from Duval and Alachua, those being Baker, Bradford, Clay, and St. Johns counties. All of these reports were of hail around pea-size or about 0.25 inches in diameter. As I mentioned in the previous section, NWS Jacksonville put together a list of the highest wind gust reports from around our area. Most of these came from areas of Duval and Alachua counties where the strongest thunderstorms of the day hit. The highest wind gusts were tied at 61 miles per hour, which is 4 miles per hour over severe limits. Overall, it was a decently active day when it came to severe weather across our region, both in respect to the hail and the wind gust. The last thing I wanted to look at was the rainfall totals we saw from these storms. As mentioned towards the beginning of the video, excessive rainfall and flooding was not expected across our region, and rainfall totals ended up reflecting that forecast. The heaviest rainfall totals from this event resided mostly north of Interstate 10 in 2 separate bands, which are seen in the light blues and greens. One was in our far western Florida counties, such as Suwannee and Hamilton, where around 1 to 1.5 inches of rain fell. Closer to home, a decent band of rain fell from just near the Florida-Georgia border of Nassau County, through Jacksonville and out to the beaches of Duval. Here, around 1 to 2 inches of rain fell, with a small pocket of rain near 2 1/4 of an inch falling near the beaches. Otherwise, across our area, rainfall totals were generally less than an inch. April 11, 2025 was quite the active day for thunderstorms across our region. Personally, I feel this is one of the most interesting days we've seen so far over the past 2 years of tracking and chasing storms across our area. From how the storms built around us almost perfectly in the fields to help us see lightning, the strong wind gusts, and freezing cold rain and outflow, it was definitely interesting from a chasing and being out in the field perspective. On a wider scale, it was interesting to see how thunderstorms developed and then progressed throughout the late afternoon and evening hours, from the storms forming within that narrow band of moisture, outflow influencing storms around us before the main MCS, and then seeing how the colder atmospheric temperatures helped influence the hail development in over half dozen counties. It was all extremely fascinating, and I feel like I've learned a lot from this day. I hope to use the knowledge I gained from April 11th, both from chasing and analyzing data and maps from home prior to the storms, to help us chase storms more effectively as we begin to move into the later parts of spring and especially the summer. And with that, I hope you enjoyed this episode of First Coast Storm Tracking. If you did enjoy the video or you feel you learned something new, consider leaving a like and subscribing if you haven't already. It lets us know that you enjoy what we do here, and it helps these videos reach a further audience. That's all I got for y'all today. Thanks again for watching, and we hope to see you on the next chase.